Alright everyone, welcome back to Deep Blue Garage. Today we are actually going to be getting the Crown Vic subframe put in. We didn't get it put in last video, but I'm going to give it all I've got and try and get it mounted this video, and we'll see how that goes. Enjoy! So we get the holes drilled for the locating pins. So there's one right there. There's the other right there. How I did it was I needed my hole to be centered on the very outside of the old hole. So you can see one of the old holes right there. I needed it centered on the very outside of that. So I took a piece of aluminum, clamped it down to the bottom. I drilled a hole through the top that centered it on the outside of the old locating hole for the old I-beams, and when I drilled it through the top, it allowed me to have a locating hole on the bottom, which I then came from the bottom with a hole saw and drilled the 3/4 inch hole from the bottom through the aluminum, and then it made a nice hole exactly where I wanted it to in the steel frame. I think that's probably the easiest way that I figured out how to do it. And now we'll see if it lines up. All right, so I would say first time's the charm on this one. I think I need to trim a little piece of the frame right there, and same thing on the other side, just to get it to clear and lay down flat. But overall, I am ecstatic with how that turned out. Got the frame trimmed where it needed to be trimmed. Right there, and same place on the other side. The alignment pins are up and completely flush. Underneath looks great. No gaps, no weirdness. I ended up taking the rear control arm bushings off so that I could get it mounted. They're gonna end up getting replaced, but I figure maybe I'll do the modification on this one just to get some practice, and then when the other ones get here I will know exactly what I'm doing, so I won't make a mistake on a brand new bushing. That's where the old brake line mounted right there, so it looks like that'll be able to stay in the same place. And then the sway bar will come up. Let me get the power steering line out of the way. The sway bar will come up, and it looks like I need to remove that pin right there. I'll get this mounted, bring those bushings in a little bit, and mount this one in, that one out a little bit. Oh, no, never mind. I forgot the sway bar. Suede. So, looks like once I remove that rivet, the sway bar will sit right up on the factory frame rail, and we'll be able to put in, I think I'm going to weld a bolt in there so that it's got threads going down. It'll make it easier to work on in the future, but I'm not 100% sure about that yet. But that's some progress. So I got the holes drilled. There's that hole, that hole, that hole, and that hole. Those are 1/2 inch holes. We need to be at about 5/8. So I need to find a 5/8 drill bit and get those holes hogged out a little bit. So for the tops, went ahead and put the upper, I don't know if you can call that a control arm or the subframe mount. Went ahead and put that on there. And like I said earlier, this one lines up perfectly. Same thing on the other side. And then the only holes we need to drill are on the front. So we'll drill those. And then on the back, we'll just enlarge those holes to fit the nut tubes that came out of this Crown Vic frame. And we'll go from there. So for the back holes, I tried just cutting it, but with the bigger hole already in there, the hole saw was kind of just jumping around. So we're going to use that aluminum trick that I showed you earlier. We're going to drill a little pilot hole in the aluminum right where we want it, and then cut through the aluminum with the hole saw and use it as a guide to drill the big hole. There you have it. Another hole right there using that aluminum trick. And grab the file real quick and deburr it. Show you that all is well there. Alright. That one drops right in, lines up with the bottom hole, and lines up beautifully with the top hole. One more hole to go. So let me show you what I'm talking about on that aluminum trick. So say you got a hole that's either off center or not where you want to drill it, or in my case, on this particular situation, I have a larger hole than my hole saw pilot drill, and if I try to drill through it, all it does is walk around and make a huge mess. So I took a piece of aluminum. I just got it from probably Home Depot, no idea. Yep, homedepot.com on the barcode. And I lined it up where I wanted. So right in the center there. I drill a pilot hole in the aluminum. And then I'm gonna come back with the hole saw. So there's my hole saw. And I'm gonna start drilling into that pilot hole. And then it'll get through that pilot hole, it'll drill through the aluminum. And then it'll have made a stencil that keeps the hole saw from walking around. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so now I'm through the aluminum, and I got my other hole centered right below it, which is exactly where I want it. You can see the other hole way deep down in there that I want to go through as well. So now I'm just going to use the aluminum as a guide for my hole saw. You see it doesn't wiggle around in there that much. And using that, I'll get a much cleaner hole in the frame. So now I use that aluminum as the guide. Now I have a hole right through the center of it, exactly where I want it. Grab that piece of tube from the frame. Move the aluminum out of the way. Drops right in. Perfect fit. Alright, now all four of them are drilled. Now it is time to mount it up and give it a test fit. Alright, so we got our 4-frame tube nut things. Drop them all in. We'll take our 4 bolts up from the bottom. Now these are going to get welded in, but for right now I'm just using the crescent wrench to line them up and put them in temporarily. Get a little extension. Alright, so now all the bolts are coming in from the bottom. Now they each have a nut that goes on the top. Tighten up the upper control arm. No, not the control arm, but the upper frame. And with any luck, when I take the jack out, the subframe will stay in place. The subframe is holding in place on its own. I want to see how low it is. Alright, let's bring it down and see how low it is. This is awesome. So I still have to do the rear axle. So I'll lower it a little bit more. Well, level it out a bit. But it looks awesome. It's not too low. I guess, I mean, I'm sure that we'll see more once we get the fenders on, but it looks amazing.